Good morning.
Good morning.
Thank you, Angela. That was beautiful. Thank you. And Jenna, you are awesome. Thank you. Welcome. Welcome to the Alaska Center for Spiritual Living. Thank you for coming out on this snowy Alaskan day. It's good to see everybody. And it's good to see those who are maybe watching on YouTube. It's good to have you watching as well. The giant redwood in Northern California is absolutely amazing. I had the privilege of taking my ministerial exams, the sit-down portion in Northern California, and all of us from the Denver region got together and we rented a house. And it was right in the middle of some of these giant redwoods, and we had the opportunity to learn a little bit about them. There are about 50 of these trees that are over 360 feet tall. To put that in perspective for us in Alaska, if you took what I used to call the Arco Towers, now it's the ConocoPhillips, the tallest of the buildings in the ConocoPhillips complex down there, and made it half again as big. You know, so it's 1.5 times its big, it would still be smaller than one of these trees. And the things that are involved in keeping something that massive alive and thriving. First of all, the root system. I mean, you have to have a root system that is enormous to be able to hold something that large up. It's estimated that the root system would have to be close to 300 feet deep. But it's not. The root system is 5 to 6 feet deep. How can that be? Oh, well, the roots just go out a long way. They don't go deep, they go out a long way. And that's true, they do. But they would have to go out in a 300-foot radius to be able to support it. And they go out a fraction of that. How does it work? How do they do it? It's because these roots mix in and intertwine with the roots of the tree that's next to them. So when the wind comes, those roots are intertwined and they act like an extension of those roots. And it does it in a 360-degree circle around it. So the roots are intertwined. They are interdependent. But another problem, you've got 360 feet up in the air. How are you going to get water all the way up to the top of that? That would take a huge pump. I mean, it would be a really, really big pump to be able to pump water that far up. Well, the cells inside these trees, in the xylem cells, are strong enough to bring the water a significant distance up. And I don't know all the biology of it, but it actually works and they're able to get a long way up. But these trees have adapted. Where they are, fog comes in off the coast almost every day, and water is nourished to the needles of the trees by the fog that comes in, and they're able to absorb the water there. But that's not the end of it, because the fog dissipates after a few hours in the morning and the fog goes away. It leaves some of that moisture there and it's utilized, but as that moisture evaporates, it creates a vacuum, and so the needles and the leaves and the things at the top of the tree are actually pulling the water up as well. The cells themselves within this magnificent tree are also interdependent. Well, the title of my talk today is Our Interdependence. We are just like that. We are interdependent in many different ways. Last week I talked about teamwork and what it took to be a team, and how much more effective we are as human beings when we work in a team. And we talked about the teams that we have here, all of the different teams that we have here. It makes us more effective as a center, more effective as a spiritual community, because we work in teams. But today we're going to take that a little bit further, and we're going to look at our interdependence. So today I'm going to look at that, and I'm going to use the example, if you will, of a relationship. But this applies to anything. It can apply to any aspect of our lives. I'm just going to use relationship today. I'm going to talk a little bit about, on one extreme we have codependency. Then on the other extreme, at the end of the spectrum, we have total independence. And along this long spectrum, somewhere in the middle, there is an interdependence. Codependent. Codependency is when one part of the equation looks for approval from someone or something else. When the only way you can get self-validation, when you can only feel good about yourself, is when you get that feedback from someone else. You don't have that within yourself. And that produces this codependency. The lyrics of the song, Higher Love. Angela, that was awesome. Things look so bad everywhere in this whole world. What is fair? We walk blind and we try to see, falling behind in what could be. Bring me a higher love. Bring me a higher love. I listen to that and I hear a cry for a higher love. I hear a cry for a connection with something that is greater than ourselves. I see a cry for something that is better. And I submit that there is something within there. I feel like that is a very codependent cry. And yet in the middle of that, there is this place of interdependency. Now, the other end of the spectrum is independent. And that's kind of woven into who we are. It's part of American culture. It's part of particularly the West, the rugged, independent, doesn't need anybody or anything. A pioneer can go out and build a home out of logs in the middle of nowhere. It's that rugged individualist. And I think that our dear friend Ralph Waldo Emerson contributed to a lot of that. And we love Ralph Waldo Emerson. But I think that in some cases he's been misunderstood. We're going to talk about independence. What a better way than just open up my textbook from the Roots class and turn to his essay on self-reliance. And all I have to do is go through and look at all the chapters, the highlights, the phrases that have been underlined, in some cases 3 and 4 times. To believe your own thought, to believe that what is true for you in your private heart is true for all men, that is genius. Trust thyself. Every heart vibrates to that iron string. Whoso would be a man must be a nonconformist. Nothing is at last sacred but the integrity of your own mind. Ralph's telling us to be independent. It's that rugged independency. What I must do is all that concerns me, not what people think. It is easy in the world to live after the world's opinion. It is easy in solitude to live after our own. But the great man is he who in the midst of the crowd keeps with perfect sweetness the independence of solitude. Great cry for independence. But what we're talking about today isn't rugged independence. It is interdependence. And if we go a little bit further back in this essay and look at some of the other things that Emerson wrote, and I think he clarifies a little better. I must be myself. I will not hide my tastes or aversions. I will so trust that what is deep is holy, that I will do strongly before the sun and moon whatever inly rejoices me and the heart appoints. If you are noble, I will love you. If you were not, I will not hurt you, and myself by hypocritical attentions. If you are true, but not in the same truth with me, cleave to your companions, and I will seek my own. I do this not selfishly, but humbly and truly. And I think what Emerson is saying there really is a plea for that interdependency. A plea for us not to be so independent that we don't commune with one another, we're not with one another, but it's a plea for us to come together and support one another. I think it's magnificent. When we came together as a center, how long has it been? 5 years ago, and we all came together and we created our vision, our mission, and our purpose statements. And I think it's just so powerful that one of the founding things about what all we do is we talk about being an empowered, uplifting, inclusive community. But community and supporting one another is one of the cornerstones of what we do and what we are in this community. Interdependence. What do we mean by this term, interdependence? According to the dictionary, it is a reciprocal relation between objects, individuals, or groups. Mutual dependence. Kind of a tricky word. They use dependence to define interdependence, but they also throw in this idea of mutual interdependence. Mutual dependence. When I think of that, the first thing that comes to my mind is the egret, the cattle egret, and how it exists with the cattle. And I think we have a picture of it. And there is a picture of a cattle with the egret sitting on it. That was always used as an example of one form of symbiosis. And it was always used as one where the bird took advantage of the cow. It didn't hurt it in any way, but the bird profited from the cow walking through the grass and kicking up insects, which the bird ate. Sounds like a pretty good deal. But this was really a mutual dependency, because we found later that the cow benefits as well, because the presence of the bird keeps insects from flying into the cow's eyes, nose, ears, and everything else, and the bird actually is there helping the cow as well. So they are mutually dependent on one another. Symbiosis, the definition, an interaction between two different organisms living in close physical associations, typically to the advantage of both. A mutually beneficial relationship between different people or groups. Brings us to this idea of the yin and the yang that are within us. We've got the opposite ends of our spectrum of dependency. We've got codependency all the way to independency. And within us, we have a yin and a yang, and we all have that within us. This idea that we're either totally codependent or we're totally independent isn't right, because it's all a mixture all the time. All of our relationships change and they're fluid. Sometimes they can be codependent, and maybe that's not a bad thing. But sometimes they can be very, very independent, and maybe sometimes that's not a bad thing. But I think that it's important that we work toward the middle to where we can have an interdependency, where we can count on one another. We can count on the fact today, because Kevin made the coffee, that we're going to have really good coffee after service today. I did find that interesting, however, that they got into the whole coffee team, and I think that's what they're trying to do, is make sure that everybody is fully awake before they get back in their cars to drive home. I hope that's not a comment on my sermon. How can we support one another? We can support one another in a host of different ways. This isn't a joke. This is a true story. I get roped into the darndest things. One day I got a call from Linda Steiner, and she says, and it's the middle of the Iditarod time, or at the end of the Iditarod time, and she works with Allie Zirkle, and she says, "Oh, Allie's rig needs to go into the car, and I need somebody to come and follow me down to the dealership, and we're going to take her rig in, a dog truck in, and then I need her ride back." And so I think I'm just going down there to follow her down the road and pick her up and bring her back. Well, I arrived to find out, oh, well, there is something else. It's got these dog sleds on top of it, and they can't be on it. It won't fit into the bay at the dealership so the dog sleds have to come off. Well, okay, I can do that. So she, being somewhat more lithe than me, she jumps on the top of this thing, and it's like 12 feet in the air, and she starts unbuttoning these dog sleds, and she whips one of them back to the back, and I'm clear down on the bottom. She's 12 feet in the air, and she tips this sled up and starts putting it down. And she says, "Here we go. I'll guide it, you catch it." What could possibly go wrong with that plan? Interdependency. I think I was the dependent. Ernest Holmes wrote, "People, things, institutions, methods, sciences, philosophies are all good. From each I shall learn everything that I can, and with deep gratitude acknowledge the good that I am receiving from whatever source. But I am still whole within myself, dependent upon nothing, and yet always interdependent with all things." Man's a genius. The yin and the yang, and how they mix together, and how we can be part of one at one time, and it can change. The yin can become the yang, and the yang can become the yin. And we are an empowered, uplifting, spiritual community, inclusive. On Friday, I opened the paper, and I'm kind of thumbing through, not really paying too many things, and I got to the play section, and I flopped it over, and boom, what popped up but a picture of Stevie, our Stevie, in this dance troupe. And so I texted her. Yeah, she is in this dancing. Now, we're all familiar with her from her rap, and then we found out she does R&B as well. She's very talented. And now come to find out she dances as well. So today, Sunday, 3 p.m., at the Wendy Williamson Auditorium, her dance troupe will be performing. Tickets are $10 to $20. You get it from brownpapertickets.com. They're a little more at the door, $5 more at the door. But we can be part of that interdependence by supporting Stevie. And I would be totally remiss if I didn't mention Jessica, who has performed numerous times in the Anchorage area, and she happens to be performing right now. The name of this in itself captures my attention. "I love you, you're perfect, now change." Wonder if there's any codependency going on there. "I love you, you're perfect, now change." It's Thursday through Sunday, goes out to March 10th out at Cyrano's. She has been in things like Doll's House Part 2. I should mention that the current one, "I Love You, You're Perfect, Now Change," may not be suitable for the little ones. So we're not inclusive on that direction. So.
Yeah, only twice? Okay. We would wholeheartedly recommend it.
Okay. Oh, you guys have been.
Yeah.
All right.
I went last night. It was amazing.
All right. So we've got all kinds of things that we can do. So with this idea, this concept of our own interdependence, and our opportunity to move from codependence to interdependence, to move from independence more toward, from independence to interdependence, I'm going to ask my colleagues, the practitioners, to join me in holding our congregation in love and light. And just simply recognizing, as we said in that powerful sacred reading, there is a magnificent power in the universe. And it is everywhere, at every moment of time, in every place. So that infinite power is within each and every one of us. It always is there. Now, sometimes we may feel disconnected. We may feel distant. We may feel separate from that infinite source, separate from one another. But we can't be, because we are all part of that infinite source. We are all part of this magnificent universe. We are all part of that divine creative force. And so as that divine creative force expresses through and as each and every one of us, it carries the nature of that divine force with it. We are all tied together. We are all, regardless of our race, regardless of our ethnicity, regardless of anything else, we can't change it, because all that is God. And we are here, so therefore we must be part of God as well. And since we have a firm conviction that God didn't make mistakes, we know that we are connected. We are perfect in every way. It can be no other way. So we can step outside of the bounds of separation. We can step out of the limitations of codependency. We can step out of the prison of total independency and move to a place of interdependency. And so that is what I call forth now, the very interdependency that is the nature of God. And it applies to everything in our lives. It makes no difference. For those of us that are experiencing financial challenges, we know that we live in an abundant universe, and that infinite presence is present in that infinite universe. We just open ourselves up to a higher expression of prosperity and abundance. I also speak my word now for those who are experiencing health challenges, knowing that within each and every one of us is a perfect code of perfect health. A code that is absolutely perfect. And it would go from the smallest subatomic particle to the atoms, to the molecules, to the DNA that's within each cell, to every cell fiber. There is an infinite knowledge that's present. And it is that infinite knowledge of perfection for health, that I call forth now for anyone who is experiencing that feeling, that appearance of dis-ease. We just know that a higher truth is there. And it applies for those with mental health as well. Mental health, no different than a broken leg. That there is a pattern, a beautiful mental equivalent of perfect mental health right here and right now. And so we call perfect health for those that are facing the appearance and the challenge of mental health. So we just give thanks. We give thanks for our awareness of the power and the presence of God in all that we are, in all that we do. We give thanks for good health. We give thanks for good mental health. We give thanks for prosperity and abundance. And most of all, we give thanks. We give thanks for the very love of God. And now we just sit back and allow that divine creative force to drive the bus. And we are just along for the ride. And so it is.
So it is.